All right, food is medicine. So I want you to imagine that you have a medical condition. So let's say that you have hypertension, and you decide to visit 3 doctors. Okay, you visit the first doctor, and the doctor looks at you and says, "Okay, I'm gonna prescribe for you lisinopril." Y'all know lisinopril. It's an ACE inhibitor. It's used to treat hypertension. You go to the second doctor, and the doctor says he does a little bit more examinations, does a little bit more thorough workup. He says, "You know what? I think you actually need a stent, a surgically implanted stent within one of your arteries." Then you go to a third doctor, and this doctor, he says, "I want you to go on a whole foods, plant-based, vegan diet." Okay. Now, in your mind, how many of the doctors gave you medicine? All 3? Most people would say that only 2 of the doctors actually gave them medicine. The third doctor maybe just gave them some advice. Okay? But today I want to challenge that notion and hopefully ingrain in your mind that food indeed is medicine. You understand? Okay? And so for most of us, when we think of medicine, we think of pills, tablets, injections, and surgeries. That's medicine for most of us. Okay? But I want to argue today using science that food is indeed also in the equation. It is medicine. That's what I want to argue with you today. So I want to challenge our common understanding of what medicine is. And to kind of as a template to guide us in our presentation, I want to use this very simple template. When you look at a lot of our chronic diseases, it follows a very simple pattern. Okay, this is overly simplified, but it'll help you understand. There's a cause, right? Every disease has a cause. Often in chronic diseases, it causes low-grade subclinical inflammation, which then leads to chronic disease. This is making sense? Okay? Medicine must accomplish 3 things. First, medicine must prevent. It's true? Medicine should prevent diseases. Second, medicine should treat, right? It should impact your physiology so that it kind of deals with whatever issues at hand. And hopefully, if you have all those things in place, hopefully medicine will also help reverse diseases. Okay? Now, if we can demonstrate from science that food can accomplish all these 3 things, then would you agree that we can legitimately consider food as medicine? Are we on the same page? Okay, so let's try to demonstrate that from the science. That food prevents, it treats, and as a component of a healthy lifestyle, it can also help reverse many of our chronic diseases today. All right, so let's begin with causes prevention. The New England Journal of Medicine. How many of you have heard of the New England Journal of Medicine? Okay, it's one of the leading medical journals. They looked for the 200th anniversary. They did a study back at when it first was published in 1812, and they were kind of looking, what were the doctors in 1812 talking about? Okay, now anyone want to take a guess? What are some of the concerns of doctors 200 years ago in 1812? Maybe take a few guesses. What are the major concerns? What are these guys writing about in the New England Journal of Medicine? Yes, ma'am. Plague. Okay, interesting. Plague. Okay, what else? Matthew. Smallpox. Okay. I'll give you a few. Cannonball injuries. Okay. Cannonball injuries. Gunshot wounds. And get this, quote unquote, drinking cold water. Okay. Then in 1912, the diseases were what? Tuberculosis, malaria, gonorrhea, these kind of things. How about in 2012? Cancer, stroke, heart disease. Do you see a change here? What's the difference? Most of the diseases of today, we've transitioned from infections and things like that. Now most of our diseases are lifestyle-related chronic diseases. Makes sense? In fact, the World Health Organization says by 2020, that's in 2 years, 2/3 of all diseases will be the result of lifestyle choices. Okay. Now the fact is, in 2 years, so 2/3 of all diseases will be lifestyle-related. Do you think in 2 years, 2/3 of our medicine will be lifestyle-related? No, it's still going to be the typical medicine. Okay. But if lifestyle is the cause of most of our diseases, then what should be part of the treatment? Or what should be part of the medicine? Lifestyle. Make sense? If you have medicine, if you try to treat lifestyle-related diseases and not implementing a lifestyle, then it's a lost battle. Okay? So we have to recognize that. In fact, the U.S., the JAMA, the journal, they come out with a report just in April of this year listing the top killers in America. And you want to take a guess, what are some of the top killers in America today? The top is ischemic heart disease, cancer, COPD, Alzheimer's, colorectal cancer, diabetes. Do you notice a pattern here? Food impacts or is a root cause of many of the top killers in America today. Ischemic heart disease, COPD is more like smoking, things like that. Alzheimer's disease has a strong link with diet. Colorectal cancer has a strong link with diet. Diabetes, definitely. Stroke. So many of our top killers today are food related. But when we typically deal with these conditions or try to prevent them and treat them, we often, food is not in the picture. Is this making sense? In that same report, they write, diet, tobacco use, and high systolic blood pressure were the leading cause of death, while tobacco use, high body mass index, and diet were the leading risk factors for disability-adjusted life years. These are life years that you lose because of a certain factor. Notice they listed diet. And you notice the underline on the high systolic blood pressure? I underline that because that's also impacted by diet. Make sense? High body mass index, you notice here, I underline high body mass index, that's also impacted by diet. All right, so many of our chronic diseases, the root cause is diet, all right? So then the question is, which diet? Okay, which diet on planet Earth can you eat that's gonna help prevent many of these chronic diseases? Does anyone want to take a guess? It might kind of seem obvious based on that. Yeah. You know, a lot of people say vegan, but I don't agree with vegan. I agree with the term whole foods, plant-based. Okay, the reason is because Coca-Cola is vegan. Okay? It's true. Coca-Cola, Pepsi, that's vegan. Okay? Oreo cookies are vegan. Okay? So just because you go vegan is not really impressive. Okay? You have to eat whole foods, plant-based. Whole foods means you get the stuff from the grocery store, you transform it yourself into food. That's what we mean by whole foods. And of course, plant-based, all right? So let's look at some of the studies that demonstrates that a whole foods, plant-based diet can help prevent a lot of these chronic diseases or a lot of these medical conditions. All right, let's look at the Adventist health studies. Okay, how many of you are aware of the Adventist health studies? Okay, so Seventh-day Adventists are a religious group. We're in a Seventh-day Adventist church. They did a study on Seventh-day Adventists. They did 3 major studies: the Adventist mortality studies, Adventist health study number 1, and Adventist health studies number 2. They studied over 96,000 Seventh-day Adventists, and they looked at different diet-related things. They say, okay, since these people have these different diets, let's see the risk of disease in this population group. This is a very large study, over 96,000 individuals, and these are some of the results. Notice here, the BMI, so this is weight. Non-vegetarians, semi-vegetarians, pesco-vegetarians, lacto-vegetarians, and vegans, okay? You notice, the more plant-based you are, the trimmer you are. Is this true? You see that? Okay, the BMI going down. The lower BMI, generally better, okay? But notice the vegans, only the vegans were within the BMI range that's considered normal and healthy. Even the lacto-ovo vegetarians had a BMI 25.48, which is considered overweight. Okay? Now, it's not saying that if you're lacto-ovo, you're going to automatically become overweight. I'm not saying that. Just in this study, on average, they found that only the vegans, those who are fully plant-based, had a BMI that's within healthy range. Is this making sense? Okay? And this is a very consistent finding within the studies that the more plant-based you go, the more lower the risk of you becoming overweight and having excess weight. The more greener your diet, the more preventative it is. So in this study, they looked at the Seventh-day Adventists again, and they looked at the risk of various different diseases. And if you look here, this is the vegetarians as compared to non-vegetarians. if you're vegetarian, your risk of hypertension is 55% lower. Okay? These are lacto-ovo vegetarians. It's the same risk as the vegetarians. Okay? However, if you go vegan, more plant-based, your risk of hypertension drops to 75%. Lower risk. You see that? Okay? Same with diabetes. Vegans had a 78% lower risk of getting diabetes. And this is even lower than the lacto-ovo and the vegetarians. Is it making sense? So if you're a vegetarian, that's good because your risk of diabetes and things like that goes lower. But the more plant-based you go, so the more animal products you cut out of your diet, the lower your risk. For all cardiometabolic outcomes, vegans had lower risk than lacto-ovo vegetarians compared to non-vegetarians. All right. How about cancer? Okay, cancer is a plague on our society. Okay, it's going up. The more plant-based you go, right, the lower your risk of cancer. So in this study, they looked at just vegetarians compared to omnivores. And the vegetarians had an 8% lower risk of all cancers, half the risk of colon cancer. Half the risk of colon cancer, lower risk of gastrointestinal cancer, and prostate cancer, and also breast cancer you could include in that as well. Is this making sense, everyone? Okay, so the science is very consistent. You know, this is only the Adventist health studies. I could talk about the EPIC studies from Oxford and other studies where they show that the more plant-based you go, the lower your risk of even getting these diseases in the first place. And that's really important, yes? We don't want to get the disease and try to deal with it afterwards. We want to try to prevent it, okay? And if you or a loved one you know is not eating well, you want to encourage them to eat healthy because they'll help prevent these conditions, all right? Right, so I believe that the science is compelling, that food is a preventative, okay? How about food as medicine, as something to treat and also to reverse chronic diseases? All right, I'm going to introduce you to the BROAD study. Okay, this is a study that's happening right now. And they've released some initial findings from the BROAD study. And what they did in this study was they got people that had diabetes, hypertension, ischemic heart disease, and these other conditions, and they divided into two groups. One group received just standard medical care, just like, hey, just keep on doing what you're doing with the doctor, just keep on doing what you're doing. The other group, they told them to go on a low-fat, whole foods vegan diet, and they compared the two. Make sense? Over several months. Okay, and this study is ongoing now. Okay, they're following these people for 2 to 3 years. And this is what they found. Okay, the control group, this is just like the standard medical group. Okay, the weight loss compared to the whole foods plant-based. Who lost more weight? The whole food plant-based by a significant margin. Okay, you notice the BMI as well. The blue line is the whole foods plant-based group. Significantly larger or better weight loss in the whole foods plant-based group as compared to just those who are on a standard medical treatment. Make sense? All right. By the way, I want to stop here and just, why is excess weight important to discuss? Beyond just like you look better when you're trimmer or whatever, like, what's the health implication of weight? Sorry? There's a risk factor. Why is that so? Yeah, what's the fat doing?
It's actually putting toxins back in your body.
Right. Yes. Oh, that's true, yeah, for arthritis and things like that, yeah. You know, when you have excess fat, you have to understand something, that excess fat doesn't just sit there and it's just kind of just sitting there. It doesn't do that. Fat as a cell is actually very metabolically active. And the problem with it is that it actually releases inflammatory cytokines within your body. Okay? This is why, for instance, in diabetes, obesity, excess weight is a risk factor for diabetes. Why? Everyone thinks that for diabetes that the problem is sugar. Okay? Sugar is an issue with diabetes, but the root cause is actually intra-organ fat buildup in your organs that's causing inflammation within your pancreas, that's causing your pancreas to go out of whack. Does that make sense? Right? So this is why when they're carrying excess fat within their body, and especially in their intra-organs, it's very, very dangerous. This is why it leads to a lot of chronic disease, okay? This is why when we see studies like this that says that a whole foods plant-based diet lowers your weight, That is extremely important. All right, let's continue on. Cholesterol, you can see here the whole foods plant-based diet did better in cholesterol. Keep on going. Waist circumference. Now, waist circumference is really important, okay? Because, you could build up fat in many places, right? In your cheeks, you're like, that thing that hangs here, right? You can build up fat in many places. But what's most important is in the waist, because here you got a lot of your important organs, right? This is why it's extremely important dealing with the waist circumference. And when you see studies like this, that shows that those who are on a standard medical treatment, they had pretty much no change in the waist circumference in 6 months. Whereas those who are on a whole foods plant-based vegan diet, they drop the waist circumference significantly. Okay, and if they continue this study onwards, you would have seen an even greater drop, I believe. Okay, now this is huge. In the whole foods plant-based group, they were able to decrease their medications. Whereas those who are on standard medical treatment, they actually increased the number of medications they were using in the 6-month period. Okay? So when you go on a whole foods plant-based diet, actually, just backtrack, often in common medical treatment, what they'll tell their patients is you have to take these meds for life. Okay? That's what they'll say. Cholesterol drugs, all the other drugs, they'll say you have to take these for life. Even when your numbers come back normal, they'll say you have to continue taking them, because if you get off them, then you will go back. That's what they'll say. But a whole foods plant-based diet allows you to normalize your metabolism and your body so that you can actually start cutting back on your meds. And what's happening is oftentimes in common medical treatment, that you don't get cut back on meds, they actually keep on adding more medications. Okay? Now, I want to make very clear, I'm not against medications. Okay, I want to make that very clear. Okay, I'm not against medication. I believe that there's definitely a place for medications, but if we're using medications without integrating food and lifestyle, then it's a lost cause. Yes, you understand? Okay, and we have to understand that food is extremely powerful. Okay, just like medication is, food is also very powerful as well. Okay, now I want to ask you a question: does it need to be plant-based? That's an important question, right? Can I kind of go on like a semi-vegetarian, semi-vegan diet and still get the benefits? Let's look at a study here. Dr. Neil Barnard and them, they did a study on people with different risk factors for glycemic control and cardiovascular disease, and they put them on 2 different diets. They put them on a standard American Diabetes Association recommendation diet. This includes meat, but it says don't eat too much fat and things like that. Don't eat too much meat, but you can still eat meat. They compared that to people who are on a low-fat, whole foods vegan diet. The vegans were able to decrease their meds more than those who are on the ADA diet. Does it make sense? Okay? They were able to drop their A1C more than those who are on a diet that still included meat. Okay? Hemoglobin A1C is a marker of diabetes, long-term diabetes control. Okay, 0.038 compared to negative 1.23. Now, negative 1.23 doesn't seem like a lot, but when it comes to hemoglobin, that's actually significant. Okay, a weight change, the whole food vegan diet group did better on the weight change than the ADA diet, the diet that included meat. So, I want to say, if you go more whole foods plant-based, even if you don't cut out meat, are they still getting benefits? Yes, they are, right? So we can't deny that for sure. However, when you go the more whole foods plant-based you go, it seems like you're giving yourself a better chance at dealing with your medical condition. Does it make sense? Okay. All right. Now, if you don't want to give up your meat, it's still better to try to go whole foods, right? So, okay. All right. And now, why is food so important? So why are we seeing these such powerful results with food? And the reason is because when you're using food as your medicine, you're actually dealing with the root causes of your medical conditions. And I want to use an illustration of a faucet. So imagine we're in this kitchen and the faucet's going, okay, and there's water all over the floor. Is it any good for us to start getting mops out and start mopping the floor? No, why? Yeah, you have to turn off the faucet. Is this true? Right? You have to deal with the root cause of the problem. Okay? Many times in our medicine today, we're just dealing with the water on the floor and not dealing with turning off the faucet. Does it make sense? Right? But when you're using food as medicine, you're actually doing the opposite. You're dealing with the root cause. Okay? Some of you health junkies might recognize this individual, Dr. Mark Hyman. He says, disregarding the underlying causes and treating only risk factors is somewhat like mopping up the floor around an overflowing sink instead of turning off the faucet, which is why medications usually have to be taken for a lifetime. Okay? And now, I could use the example of my father. He went to see a doctor, and he has high cholesterol, and the doctor gave him statins and whatever. And I asked him, so what did the doctor say? He's like, yeah, he said he had to take these for life. Okay. He's still eating eggs, still eating meat, still eating cheese, still eating all these cholesterol-filled stuff, and the doctor says, instead of dealing with that stuff, the doctor said, well, you have to just take these for life. This is exactly what Dr. Mark Hyman is talking about. If you're dealing with just the symptoms and not the root cause, then yes, you're going to be on supplements and medications for the rest of your life. But if you use food as your medicine and deal with the root causes, then that allows you to cut back on some of these things and give your body the best chance at healing. Make sense? Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about is one of the root path of physiological things that are happening within the body is something called inflammation. Okay, inflammation. Now, sometimes inflammation is given like a bad rep, but inflammation is actually a very good thing. Do you know that? Inflammation is a good thing. Inflammation means that your body is active and is healing itself. Okay? But normally what needs to happen is if you have an insult on your body, then it causes inflammation. Generally, the body is able to handle it, and then it is able to tone down the inflammation and then ultimately result in healing. Make sense? But what happens in chronic diseases is that you got an unnecessary added insult on your body, which is leading to chronic low-grade subclinical inflammation, which then leads to chronic disease. Is this making sense? Okay, so what I mean by chronic subclinical low-grade inflammation is that it's inflammation that you don't really recognize, you can't see, but it's happening within the body. So for instance, if I get punched in the face, you're gonna get a bruise and stuff like that. That's a very that's an obvious sign of inflammation, right? But subclinical low-grade chronic inflammation is happening within your body. It's happening, but you can't really detect it as well. Okay? But a lot of doctors and scientists recognize that this subclinical low-grade chronic inflammation is actually the basic physiological thing that's happening that's promoting chronic diseases. Okay? But so if we can deal with the subclinical chronic inflammation, then we can help resolve a lot of these chronic diseases. Okay? And anyone want to take a guess? What are foods in our diet that promotes inflammation? Dairy is a good one. Yes. Meat, sugar, yes. Sorry? Salt? Oh, I don't know. I don't think so. Actually, I'm not that against salt. I think salt is actually okay, depending on different situations. But yeah, some of the foods here, okay. Refined sugar, meat, alcohol, things like that. All right. Meat is definitely inflammatory. Meat contains omega-6 fatty acid, the arachidonic acid, which some of you medical people would know is the one that promotes inflammation within the body, right? High consumption of red meat may increase inflammation, oxidative stress because of high intake of saturated fat, protein, and so forth. Okay, basically, bottom line, meat is inflammatory. In fact, they did a study on Seventh-day Adventists, and these scientists wanted to study black Adventists with white Adventists. Say, okay, who is kind of more inflamed, right? And what they found out was that regardless of your race, right, those who are plant-based had lower inflammation than those who are eating meat. It didn't matter what race you were, okay? So if the more plant-based you go, the less inflammatory stuff you're putting in your body, then the less inflammation you have in your body, then the lower your risk and the better the chance of treating lots of these chronic diseases. Does that make sense? Okay. He's telling me we have to close up soon. Okay, I'll talk about one other thing. The other reason why food is so important is because it gives the body the chance to heal itself. And in order to illustrate that, I want to use the example of a plant. I want to ask you the question, what makes a plant grow? Can you pull on the top of the plant and make it grow? No. Is it the soil that makes it grow? Is it the water that makes it grow? It's none of these things. The plant, the seed in itself has a germinating principle and a growth principle within itself, right? But the soil, the soil, the sunshine, the water, it all provides the environment for which it allows a plant to grow. Does that make sense? Right? But the plant grows within itself. It has that principle to grow within itself, right? But all these other things helps it grow, right? You have to recognize something really, the same thing is true with your body. Your body has innate mechanisms to heal itself. This is extremely important because many times when you go to doctors and medical people, they'll tell you that you cannot reverse your disease. Your disease is going to continue to progress. And all you can do is manage. Right? That's the new word in medicine today. They say all you can do is manage. They rarely talk about disease reversal. Okay? But you have to understand something, that your body has the ability to heal itself if you give it the right environment to do so. Am I making sense? Right? And starting with eating whole foods, plant-based, is the right starting place to give your body the chance to do that. All right? Is it making sense? So quickly here, plant foods helps lower inflammation. Fiber promotes good microbiota in the gut, which helps modulate the inflammation in the gut. I think our next dinner with the doctor is actually going to be about gut health. So we talk about, you got trillions of bacteria in your gut, how to promote a good gut health, okay? Phytochemicals, so forth. They did a study where they compared people with coronary artery disease, and they put them on a whole foods plant-based diet, and they found that those who were on a whole foods plant-based vegan diet, the arteries actually start to open up. So coronary arteries, they usually get calcified and they start to close up. On whole foods plant-based diet, Dr. Dean Ornish and his colleagues, they found out that on that diet, they were actually able to reopen up these arteries, reversal, okay, of diseases. All right, let's skip this. All right, so in closing, I just want to say, I truly believe that food is medicine, okay, and that try to deal with lifestyle-related diseases without factoring in food is a lost cause, okay, and this is really important for all of us here. If you have a chronic disease yourself, or if you know a family member that has a chronic disease, and all they're doing is taking medication, you have to encourage them to consider changing and adjusting their diet. And I believe that the science demonstrates compellingly that a whole foods, plant-based diet it gives your body the best chance at being healthy. Does this make sense? All right. Just give you some resources here. These are some good books that you can read to learn more about lifestyle medicine. Right? If you want to talk to me afterward about these books, you can definitely do so. You can learn more at my website here, Dr. George Cho. I kind of write some stuff here and there, so you can learn more stuff. And this is our clinic website. All right. Yes. We can do questions. All right. So any questions? And by the way, I can't deal with your individual lifestyle medical conditions, because in a 2-minute interaction, that's just not gonna be enough, right? So I can't deal with that. Try to keep it general. And also, if there's something I can't answer, I'll just be very straight up with you and say I'm not sure. Okay?
What do you recommend in general, I guess, to change habits of eating?
So changing habits of eating, I think it has to be a process, right? So I could even look at my own life. I wasn't vegan for my whole life. In fact, I grew up eating a lot of junk food. My father, like a typical Korean, we owned a convenience store. So it was pretty much on-demand junk food, okay? And we ate meat and things like that, but we slowly transitioned. So we cut off the really bad stuff, like the pork, the shrimp. We cut that off first. Then we started to cut off on the chicken and the beef and things like that, and then the eggs and things like that later. So some people do better cutting cold turkey, but sometimes for some people it might be better to just do a change, a process. Take it slowly. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
What is your opinion on oils? Because I've heard a lot that you should also cut all kinds of oils.
This is where I differ from people like Dr. Esselstyn, Dr. T. Colin Campbell, these folks who are really pushing no oil. I believe the general rule of thumb is that the fat that you're eating should be liquid form, not solid, right? And if you're gonna do oils, there's good studies on olive oil as being very beneficial for your health, right? But of course, being temperate on these oils is obviously makes sense, right? You don't want to eat too much oil. But I'm not someone that says like, you should cut off all oil. That's not my and I don't know if the science really supports that, to be honest with you. Yeah. But in terms of fat intake, definitely if it's in solid form, no good. Like butter stuff, not good, right? And if you want to eat oils, olive oil, things like that is probably better. Yeah. Corn oil and these other things have a lot of omega-6, and generally in our society today we overconsume omega-6. We need to try to consume more omega-3. So like flaxseed oil, flaxseed is very high in omega-3, so it's anti-inflammatory. So that might be a good option as well. Yeah, but try not to like fry as well. Like if you use the oil to frying the food isn't really health promoting. But using it to like as a salad dressing and things like that, just kind of in its like more liquidy form, eating it directly that way is better than like pouring oil on a frying pan and frying your stuff, right? So, yes, sir.
So when you speak about plant-based foods, are you specifically referring to organic?
So the question was about like, do we need to go organic? Is that right? My thoughts on organic is this. Even if someone can afford organic, I think that's good to do, right? Obviously, like if you're gonna go organic, why not, right? But I don't think that there's a scientific study or like there's compelling evidence to say that just sticking with your fruits and vegetables, even if it's not organic, that's not gonna be beneficial. Do you know what I mean? So like it's better to eat fruits and vegetables, a lot of them, even if it's not organic, right? And there's no compelling science to say that that's bad for you, right? The science definitely shows that just eating whole foods, plant-based, right, is healthy for you. So I encourage people to do that, even if it's not organic. But if people can afford organic, then why not go for it, right? But just because you can't, don't just kind of like give up on the idea. No, continue to go whole foods, plant-based. It's still going to be better than eating the meat.
Yeah, I was just
right.
wondering if it would have the same type of effect or impact as what you showed.
Right, I would imagine it might have a better effect, but I can't share any science to really substantiate that. So, yeah. Any other questions? We'll go there, yeah. Sorry? Too much fruit? Yeah, that's my pet peeve. So, can fruit cause diabetes? First of all, I don't believe that's true. That fruit causes diabetes. I believe it's intra-organ abdominal fat buildup within your organs that promotes and leads to diabetes. But the question I think what you're asking is fruit bad once you get diabetes? I want you to so fruit has a lot of sugar, but it's not the same as refined sugar. Okay, this is a very important distinction to make. Eating like an apple is not the same as drinking a Coke, even though both of them are quote-unquote high in sugar. The reason is because the Coke has zero fiber and the fruit has tons of fiber. And that's really important because fiber slows down the release of sugar within your bloodstream. Okay, so when you're taking when you're drinking like Coke, the body absorbs the sugar really, really quickly. Then it spikes up your glucose and it gets out of whack from there. But fruit is really different. It's packed with a lot of fiber, which slows down the release of sugar into the bloodstream, which you won't get that spike. This is why when you look at diets that are reversing diabetes, they include lots of sugar. Lots of fruit. But they'll say, don't eat the refined sugar. Your croissants, your donuts, your Coke, your juices and things like that, right? But continue to eat a lot of fruit because fruit is high in fiber, and also fruit has a lot of nutrients, so it's still good for you. So, but you might want to maybe eat lower glycemic index fruits. But I think as a general rule, fruit is still good for you, even if you have diabetes. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Does heredity still play a role with certain chronic diseases, even if you choose to go with a plant-based diet?
Right. So the question was, does heredity have a role? And I like to illustrate this way. Heredity loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. Okay, so some people, because of heredity, some people have a greater disposition. So for instance, I believe the science, and someone might correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that there's evidence suggesting that the Aboriginals, the Aboriginal, they have a higher disposition to certain things like alcoholism and things like that, just genetically, right? But that doesn't mean that automatically they become alcoholic, right? So there's definitely a genetic component to a lot of these chronic diseases, and there's no scientific study that says that 100% of vegans are never going to get diabetes. That's not right. You might be vegan, there's still that chance you might get diabetes, right? But definitely, if you focus on your lifestyle, eating whole foods, plant-based, definitely you're giving yourself an extremely good chance of not getting these diseases in the first place, even if there is a genetic kind of predisposition. Yeah. So as a general rule, yeah. Yes, sir.
Also, I've heard some bad things about like farmed fish. I heard farmed fish is bad for you. Better off to buy wild fish. But it's sometimes hard to find wild fish. More expensive. Grocery stores and stuff.
Yeah, I've heard stuff about fish. I'm not too familiar with fish. Fish is still loaded with fat and things like that. I mean, some people say, oh, fish is good because it's high in omega-3s and stuff like that. Well, you can get omega-3s other places too. It's not just fish, right? I personally am concerned about the contamination of the water and things like that. It's ludicrous to think that it's not getting into the fish. And then eventually that doesn't get into you, right? So I believe that just going more plant-based is a good rule of thumb. If people want to stick with their fish, then the wild caught fish or whatever, that might be better if you can find it. But I just believe the general rule is that going whole foods, plant-based as much as you can is the best to do. Yeah, as a general rule. Yeah, and yes, I am concerned about the stuff in the water and things that contaminate the fish. And exactly what they're feeding the fish as well. It's just not the same as like 2,000 years ago, right? I don't think it can't be the same. Yeah. Daniel, do we have time or trivia question? Oh, okay. All right, so we'll do a trivia question. Okay. All right. So in the broad study, okay, actually no, in the Adventist health studies, what was the percentage of lower risk for that they found for overall cancer risk with vegetarians? So if you go on a vegetarian diet, what was the decreased risk of overall cancer? Wrong. Close but wrong.
75?
No. 8%, yeah. Overall risk, decreased risk of cancer, yeah. All right. Well, we want to thank Dr. Cho for that presentation. So I want to also thank everyone for coming. I hope you enjoyed your time. Again, thank you to the Toronto Korean Adventist Church for providing the space. If you want to stay up, we'll be organizing future Dinner with the Doctor events. If you want to stay informed, I invite you to go to our website, www.pathwaystoWholeness.ca, and you can sign up for our e-updates, and we will let you know through that. You'll also be receiving an electronic feedback survey. Please share with us how you liked the event, what was good, what was bad, what was ugly. We want to hear it all so we can keep getting better. Okay? There seems to be leftovers, so if you're still hungry, you could grab another bite to eat. And we're ending at 7 o'clock. You can mingle around a little bit. If you have to go, feel free to do so as well. So thank you so much. Hope you enjoy your evening.